Okay, so we have the basics down. We can build a diagram that is good enough to get our communication down, and we can kind of get a feel for what our database is going to look like. Now we're going to add in a little bit more complexity. The first thing we're going to do is to add in our attributes. What are these? Well, if our entities were nouns and our relationships are verbs, then our attributes are basically adjectives. Before we get into that too much, we're going to talk a little bit about tables in general, because we know a lot about this stuff already just from, being, using Excel and working with data in other ways. So fundamental concepts. So our tables, databases have multiple tables. Each of these represent an object or person, right? So that is our entities is each separate little table, like the one in the picture below. Each row or record or tuple is another word that's pretty much a database only term as far as I know. I just say row usually. That is a group of related data values for one person or entry, right? And our columns, otherwise known as fields or attributes, is a property of the object. The properties of the tables, we know that columns in a table always have their own unique names. And then the tables themselves are unique within the database. And that should make sense, that you wouldn't want to have two different tables that are about employee data that have information about like their name and stuff. Like that's a duplication of data. It wouldn't make any sense, right? We also know that the values are going to be unique. You wouldn't have a duplicate row of exactly the same information. Anytime you have that, you want to delete those. If you think of like a survey and someone submits it twice, you want to get rid of the extra. We know that cells should only have one value each. That's the best way to keep data clean. Like you have to go out of your way to not have that happen in Excel. Yes, there are ways, but it should just have one value each. Each column should only have one type of data. So if you have numbers representing phone numbers for your first line, your second record in there shouldn't have like an address or something else instead. If that happens, something got messed up, right? Again, all this, it's all intuitive. And the order doesn't actually matter. When you're thinking about what order your data is entered in terms of your rows, you might reorder things to make it more sensible to you as the end user, but it doesn't really matter at all. Same with the column order, it really doesn't matter. And anyone who's worked with things like R, like we know this already too, right? Because you're calling in different columns all the time or rows, and it appears as it appears. I'm sure the other programming languages are very, very similar. So all these, whether you've talked about them before or not explicitly, should feel fairly intuitive. And all of these transfer into the database world as well.